Conventional places, like skyscrapers or in the air. And in the air means structures that can support vegetation on platforms. A prominent architect, Javier Pons, designed a building with 3 levels powered by solar panels on the top. The middle layer will grow various vegetables and fruits that will get nutrients from liquid instead of soil. The remains of the plants will drop to the bottom layer to feed fish, which can also be grown for food. Each structure will be large enough to support an entire city if needed. Skyscrapers can also host some mini farms on rooftops to support neighborhoods. A lot of greenery in cities will reduce pollution and essentially lower temperatures in hot places. Now, what about our cute little pooches? We all love coming home to our dogs, sprinting up to us and jumping around. They're either saying, "Feed me, I'm starving," or "Please don't ever leave me again." But what if we could figure out exactly what they're saying? Well, we've developed technology to understand our dogs clearer with the help of a mood collar. You put the device on your dog, and a digital screen indicates your dog's mood by colors. We already know that dogs speak to us or other dogs using their body language. A wagging tail is a sign of excitement or happiness. Snarling and exposed teeth mean aggression and back off. And of course, there's barking. Some barking noises can be warnings, others might be friendly greetings. Artificial intelligence will help us understand what our dogs are telling us by recording them on our phones. It's important that the app sees the dog's body language too, including the pooch's ears, tail, eyes, mouth, and so on. The app will then send this information to the cloud. The AI technology will decode this data by studying thousands of hours of animal footage and picking up the right expressions and sounds. This will allow vets to better understand their dog patients and prevent any harm that can follow. It will also help train dogs not to be too friendly to delivery people or pedestrians walking by in the park. The future of commuting lies in the air. No longer will we have to wait at a red light, counting the seconds till it turns green so we can make it on time to work. What if we use flying taxis as a means of human transportation? Hey, now we're talking! Electric air taxis are becoming a thing for transporting people. Amazon is experimenting with air deliveries, and they're proving to be a success. Flying machines have sensors that can notice hazards like birds, wires, and large objects. It's up to countries to adopt this new form of transportation. Even though air deliveries are available, authorities still need to figure out how to organize them, create rules, and set up safety measures. As for air taxis operated by people, we have to consider who is eligible to drive them or what kind of models can be produced. But we might see the sky filled with air taxis already in our lifetime. The future of fast food is about to change pretty soon. There are already digital cashiers where you can order food using a touchscreen and pay there without interacting with a human. Still want fries with that? Japan has pizza vending machines where you can buy freshly baked pizzas. Companies are creating robots that can prepare a burger and fries menu. They're quick and accurate. They won't add too much cheese or forget the onions. All these robots need someone to maintain them. Now imagine going to a fast food joint and not seeing a single human in front of you. You place your order with a digital cashier after customizing it. You pay and watch the robots at work. You'll likely see mechanical arms lifting the deep fryer and preparing a burger in front of you. Don't expect to see a humanoid chef preparing your meal. Robots are designed to perform specific tasks. That's why mechanical arms are more than enough. And if the future is flying delivery robots, there won't be any hassle of someone getting stuck in traffic while bringing your meal. Booking a ticket across the world is easy, but what if you could go to space for fun? Many major space travel companies like SpaceX and Virgin Galactic are looking for ways to turn space into a new tourist hub. It may go as far as the International Space Station or just to the border between the atmosphere and what is considered space. There's also the idea of a space elevator that could send people to the International Space Station. It'd be a tall structure based on Earth and reaching space, with an elevator moving passengers up and down. This would make space travel very accessible for anyone and cheaper than launching a rocket into space. There might be a future where the internet will be available everywhere around the world, no matter where you are. It's crazy, but only half of the world's population is online. Companies like Google see the internet as a human right and are trying to use helium balloons to beam it to remote places. Other companies are trying a different approach, like sending microsatellites into space, each the size of a cat. Meow. This will be a game changer for everyone to have access to the internet, which essentially means free knowledge for all. Imagine good old bricks being able to store energy to power your house. This project is still in its very early stages, but scientists in America are developing something called smart bricks that could be the future of construction. Each wall can store so much energy that it'll last for many hours. A special coating known as PDOT will harness electrodes, ultimately converting the bricks into powerful batteries. The red pigment in the bricks is made of iron oxide, which also helps them store energy. This will make a smart home even smarter. Now, I don't know about you, except you're a nice person, but if I had the opportunity to bring something from science fiction to life, this would definitely be a teleportation machine. I'm so tired of traffic and spending hours traveling abroad, and the idea of getting teleported to any part of the planet within seconds sounds way too appealing. So yeah, obvious choice. Let's imagine we already live in that world from science fiction, and the teleportation machine exists. If you want a fancy scientific name for what we're doing now, it's called the thought experiment. Thought experiments are common practices in philosophy, and they explore creative and unlikely scenarios. The point is not to figure out the truth about these scenarios, but to explore what we believe about them. We're going to have our own thought experiment, and imagine a world where teleportation is something regular. What happens then? And what are the possibilities of that world? Let's take a stroll around London, the capital of the UK. Yes, it's still the capital of the UK, even in this reality. See that red telephone booth? Let's walk in. No, I don't want you to call your grandma and ask her about her week, even though you probably should do it later. In this world, the telephone booth is a teleportation machine. Because, really, who needs them to make calls anymore? They're utilized for something more useful these days. So now, all you need to do is choose your destination. Use the numbers to type in the zip code of where you want to go. Now, on the screen, you see some options. Those are the exact coordinates of the teleports in your destination area. Of course, you just can't teleport yourself to any random place. This is not safe, because you can bump into someone who's already there. So there are special locations. Where do you want to go? New York? Okay, type in 10020. Now, you need to pick a location. Let it be this place. It used to be a newspaper kiosk. Yes, those were utilized too, because no one reads newspapers anymore. Let's say you're Alex. Can I call you Alex? Well, I will. So, Alex, you confirm your choice and press that button. Suddenly, you feel a breeze, and then you feel that you're dissolving into tiny pieces. Don't worry, it's normal. You're getting scanned, and your body, your consciousness, your feelings and emotions, your experiences, your skills, all of you just turn into atoms. It doesn't hurt. Then, a sudden rush, just half a second, like during free fall, and then that breeze again. You can feel that you're getting your pieces back. At first, you can barely feel your body, but just a second later, you start feeling your arms, your legs, your heartbeat, your whole body. You're whole again. You're you. But are you really you, Alex? Are you sure about that? Are you sure that every single piece of you has been delivered to your destination? Are you sure that your consciousness has traveled safely along with your body? Are you sure that this really is the original you, Alex, and not just some perfect replica? Imagine there was a crazy scientist who created your duplicate. Would that duplicate be you? No, of course not. But if you ask your duplicate that question, they would definitely say that they are you. Then why are you, Alex, so sure that the you standing here in the middle of Manhattan is the original you, and not that duplicate who is so sure that they are you? Good question. And we will never know the answer, Alex. This is the question a philosopher named Derek Parfit asked. Is the teleportation machine really a form of transport? Or does it get rid of the original you and replicate a copy in a different place? The chances are it does the latter. Let's imagine that you, Alex, interfere with your future self and treat it badly. This is considered immoral. Parfit says that any kind of harm that one person causes another is morally wrong. Even if you're harming yourself, your future self is a different person. So, basically, a poor diet or skipping the gym is morally wrong too, just like any other risky behavior or endangerment. In his opinion, society must protect individuals. That's why, in Parfit's philosophy, teleportation is wrong. So, in a world where such a machine exists, the philosopher's supporters will be the ones who will protest against the use of teleportation machines. Just like environmentalists today, who stand against airplanes because they harm the environment, the new activists will stand against this human teleporting machine. Can you sense the dilemma now? Are you ready to possibly get rid of yourself and teleport your perfect copy to New York just because an 8-hour flight is a small inconvenience? Okay, I understand that maybe your body can be broken into millions of particles and then get swiftly transported to a different place and get put together again. But it's hard to imagine how the trick could possibly work with your consciousness. It's non-material. You can't split it into anything. Then how does it travel? On the other hand, you, Alex, fall asleep every night and then wake up the next morning. We can't know for sure that yesterday's version of us doesn't just vanish, and today's version isn't a new one, and there won't be another you tomorrow. Maybe we regenerate every night. If that's so, then teleportation won't be any worse than falling asleep every night, like we've always been doing ever since we appeared on Earth. Or maybe there's a new replica of us every time we enter a different room. There's a possibility we're regenerating all the time without even realizing it. And here's one last paradox for you. 2,000 years ago, Theseus founded Athens. The guy had a ship, and over the years, the ship started to decay. So people started renovating it plank by plank until there was not a single piece left on the ship that had been there originally. So Theseus's ship is practically made of new material. Then, is it still Theseus's ship, or is it something else now? If it's not the original ship anymore, then at what point does it stop being the ship of Theseus and become something else? Some might think it happens when the first plank is replaced. Others will argue that it transitions before the last plank is replaced. And someone else will say it happens somewhere in between. Now, the same thing actually happens to us humans. We regenerate all the time. Some organs live seconds and minutes, others last hours. But the regeneration process happens all the time, and we're not the exact same person throughout our lives. Then, how is it different from teleportation? Sure, when you, Alex, step into that machine, you're about to vanish. But it's not going to be any different from how you vanished since you started watching this video. While you were watching, the previous version of you disappeared. And if you're ever teletransported to New York, it's not going to be any different. Anyway, possibly destroying your original self isn't the only problem. Actually, Derek Parfit was describing his ideas on teleportation on the example of moving from Earth to Mars, and he went even further. Let's say humans got concerned and managed to upgrade the teleportation machine. Now, it doesn't destroy the original version of you, but rather just creates your replica in the destination place, and that replica will remember the teletransportation on Earth in the first place. Now, there are practically two of you in the universe. Let's say you two get to meet. Then you, Alex, can talk to your perfect replica. But since you can talk to them, then that means that they are not you. If you pinch yourself, they will feel nothing. If you get sick, they won't feel anything and will stay healthy. So they are you, but they are also a different person. So they aren't really you. Okay, I'm going to have to go and untwist my brain from all that. Bye for now. 200 years ago, 1821. Someone's knocking on your second floor window. It's morning. You look out. There's a guy with a long pole walking down the street, tapping on everyone's windows. Weird. Well, not really. He's a knocker-upper. Seriously. Before alarm clocks were standard in every bedroom, these people used to walk through the streets, waking people up so they weren't late for work. Well, you get up and go to the bathroom. There's just a chamber pot. Great. Well, it's state-of-the-art. Fast forward 200 years, 2021. Your favorite song wakes you up. Not too loud, not too soft. You open your eyes, grab your phone, turn off the alarm, and scroll. It's time to get out of bed and go to work. You take a shower, brush your teeth, make coffee, and boil 2 eggs for breakfast. 10 minutes later, you put on your business casual and go outside. Car, highway, traffic jam. Now back then, there's an iron basin with cold water next to the mirror, which you fetched yourself yesterday from the well. You wash your face and brush your teeth with a toothbrush made from wood and hard animal hairs. Your toothpaste? A powder made from crushed bricks, charcoal, and salt. Yum. So, did people back then have really bad dental hygiene? Actually, not as bad as you think. They ate unprocessed foods like wheat, rice, fresh vegetables, and fruits. This kind of natural and healthy food is pretty easy on the teeth. No preservatives, no extra chemicals. People mostly ate food that contained vitamins that made their teeth stronger and more resistant to cavities. Rich people, though, they weren't so lucky. Sugar back then was an A-list elite item, and the rich just couldn't get enough. Confectioners were constantly coming up with new candies and sweets for them. And of course, all that sugar destroyed their teeth. And it wasn't like you could just pop over to your local dentist office. Your local dentist might also be your local barber, or even a blacksmith. The main method of dental treatment was simple: remove. And you start to talk like this. Luckily, your teeth are fine. You hardly eat any sugar. You're not going to take a shower because you already washed 7 days ago. Anyway, getting more water from the well seems like a lot of effort. You light a fire and put your clay plate right on the coals to bake yourself a corn tortilla-looking thing. Then you wash it down with a glass of milk, warm of course. You don't have a fridge. No one does. A frog is swimming in your barrel of milk. You got this tip from some weird traveler you met the other day. The frog's skin secretes a special substance that keeps microbes away. That way, your milk doesn't go sour. You only have 2 sets of clothes, so you're doing pretty well in life. One of them is at the tailor's right now. Your favorite suit, the one you washed in lye in the river yesterday, is dry and ready. You put it on. Ah, come on, another hole in your shirt? Those moths will eat anything. You go outside. The roads are dirty and the smell is, intense. People pour pots of liquid out onto the street. In a few decades, every house will be connected to a water supply system. Wow, progress! You catch a carriage, give the coach driver some coins, and hop on. Today, you're crawling down the highway. It's horrible. Hundreds of other cars, and the heat is ridiculous. You turn on satellite radio. Maybe there's something interesting happening. Ooh, awesome! The latest NASA rover just took some new photos of Mars. Well, back then, you're riding along when you suddenly hear the shouts of a newspaper seller. You ask the coach driver to stop and call out for a newspaper. The front page says that Michael Faraday just created some kind of prototype for an electric motor. You have no idea what that means, so you just flip over to the next page. Ah, the traffic jam's finally over. That sweet voice from your driving app says you'll be at your destination in a couple of minutes. Oh, the driver doesn't remember exactly how to get to where you need to go. So there's a lot of pulling over to ask passers-by for directions. You arrive at the office, sit down at your desk, open your laptop, and fire off some quick emails. You finally made it to work, the biggest weaving factory in town. You pass by rows of machines where workers sew clothes, go into your office, and shut the door behind you. The first ballpoint pen is still a few decades away, so you grab your trusty fountain pen. You read some letters and jot something down in your diary. Lunch break! You and your colleagues pre-order a business lunch special and chow down on it in the break room. Your lunch break starts pretty early because you need at least a half an hour to walk to the nearest restaurant. You order a vegetable stew and wait another 40 minutes for it to be cooked. After lunch, you go back to the factory. Right when you're packing up your stuff, you get the best text of the day. Your friend's having a party this evening. You RSVP with a bunch of emojis. You run out of the building and drive home to shower and change. Your hand is getting stiff from all that writing. You filled out about 40 sheets of accounting reports. A young man comes up and hands you an envelope. "This is for you, sir, from Mr. Harper." The man leaves and you open the letter, sent by courier. Fancy. It's from your oldest friend. He's having a party at his house. Everyone's going to sit around and listen to his niece play some music. A fun evening. Music, the company of interesting people. Nice. You make it home, pop in the shower, and put on your most stylish, but not too stylish outfit. Ready. You whip out your phone and order a car. 15 minutes later, you're pulling up to a small house. You hear music, people chatting. This party's got potential. You leave the factory, climb into another carriage, and head over to your friend's house. Before that, you stop by the tailor's, pick up your other suit, and ask him to fix that hole in your shirt. The coach pulls up to an epic estate. There are already several other carriages lined up at the huge iron gate. Ladies in magnificent dresses and gentlemen in tailcoats and top hats get out. Everyone walks down the muddy path to the main entrance. Oh, this party is amazing! The dance floor is wild, and all you can see are arms waving in the air. You recognize the DJ from your Instagram feed. She just dropped another new album. You start to get into it, dancing, moving, fist pumping. It's starting to get kind of hot in here. You stroll over to the kitchen to get something cool to drink. This has got to be one of the best parties of your life. A beautiful lady starts out with a striking melody on the pianoforte. It's Beethoven's Sonata No. 31, his latest blockbuster hit. You sit on a luxurious sofa with the other guests and enjoy the music. People clap and cheer during the piece and go wild when it's over. What else would you do when you're listening to Beethoven? Yeah, you go into full head-banging mode and jump to the beat along with everyone else. The bass is vibrating through the floor, the walls, you. As soon as the concert's over, the host invites everyone to the other room for a huge buffet. Lobster, fruit, baked vegetables, fresh hot bread, rolls, red and black caviar. Yeah, you try to play it cool, but you stuff yourself until you feel like you're about to burst. There's a knock at the door and a huge delivery of pizzas, chips, and sodas arrive. Sweet! The evening's almost over. You chit-chat a little, dance a waltz, drink tea, and down some more of that fruit dessert. Then it's time to go. You walk down the muddy streets until a carriage lets you on. Before bed, you change into your nightwear, wash your face, and light a fire to keep warm. You close your eyes. You're in a weird nightmare. Some kind of dark room surrounded by strange people. There's some sort of weird noise coming from everywhere. It feels like a rhythmic earthquake. You dance, but it's more like shaking than any dance you've ever seen. You wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night. The party's over and you're passed out on your friend's couch. You dream that you attended some beautiful old-fashioned party. Wait, isn't that Beethoven?
December 4th, 1970. Pilot Bruce Gurnon had 2 passengers on board his Beechcraft Bonanza single-engine aircraft, his father and business partner. They took off from Andros Island in the Bahamas and headed northwest for the Florida coast. Sure, they were in the infamous Bermuda Triangle's airspace, but this was a typical flight Bruce had made dozens of times before. The trip usually took about an hour and a half with no hiccups whatsoever. Bruce took off and started gaining altitude. Strange things started happening right from the get-go. At first, he noticed a small cloud up ahead, but it kept growing. Not from the plane getting closer. This thing was actually getting bigger in size. Bruce had to fly through it, and he came out the other end just fine. He gained altitude, and yet another mysterious cloud appeared. This one was massive, and Bruce had no other choice but to fly through it too. At that moment, it got dark as night all around the aircraft. But this wasn't a storm cloud, and it wasn't raining. Bruce was starting to get worried, and then, bam! He saw flashes of white light. Bruce kept flying for another 30 minutes when he realized this was the same cloud he had gone through earlier when he started to climb. But now the cloud was cylindrical, and the plane was flying through its center. It was wide and seemed endless. Bruce thought he could never get out of that trap. But a minute later, he saw light at the end of the tunnel. But all of a sudden, the walls of the cloud tunnel began to narrow. They were closing in on the plane. The navigational instruments started wigging out. The compass was spinning by itself counterclockwise. The walls kept narrowing, smaller and smaller, wrapping like a vortex. The electrical instruments still going haywire. Bruce was running out of time. He had to get out of this place fast. A grueling 20 seconds later, he burst out of this foggy trap. As Bruce described later, he felt weightless for 5 seconds as his plane left the tunnel. The clouds dispersed, and now the aircraft was in a grayish haze. The men let out a big sigh of relief. He immediately grabbed the radio and contacted ground control to determine his location. But when the dispatcher looked at the green screen, his face became contorted with confusion. Bruce's plane wasn't on the radar. It was as if the thing was invisible. But then the dispatcher said the aircraft was already in Miami airspace. Bruce was utterly shocked. It just couldn't be true. Remember, the whole trip usually took around 90 minutes, but this time, it took just 47 minutes to get to the destination. His plane didn't magically gain some supersonic speed beyond the model's limited max cruising speed. This was physically impossible. The dispatcher must have made a mistake. But when the clouds parted, Bruce saw that he really was over Miami. The plane landed safely, and it was time to try and solve this mystery. Bruce checked the remaining fuel and his watch. After a short calculation, he was only more confused. The plane hadn't gone through the amount of fuel it should have. Archive records show that 84 sunspots were recorded that day, as well as a huge solar wind. This would cause disturbances in the Earth's magnetosphere that could throw off the plane's instruments and radars. But so far, no one has been able to explain how the plane got to Miami so fast. Maybe in the future, the truth will be revealed. In the meantime, it remains another mysterious riddle of the Bermuda Triangle.
you're on a beautiful planet with unusual nature. Around you are ordinary people walking on this exotic planet. And now, get this, it's our new home. Humanity decided it was time to leave the Earth, and now we live very far away in another galaxy. But what happened to our home planet? Well, our solar system itself had an expiration date. It's been 7.5 billion years since 2020, and the Sun began to expand, absorbing planet after planet – Mercury, Venus, Earth. But the living conditions on Earth were unsuitable for us long before that. Let's go back there. In 4.5 billion years, our entire Milky Way galaxy will experience an incredible incident. The Andromeda Galaxy will hit us at great speed. As a result of the collision, some stars will be thrown into distant space, while others will form new solar systems. But most likely, all life in the new Milkomedia or Milkdromeda galaxy will cease to exist. That's why people decided to pack up their things, get into new generation spacecrafts, and go to distant space in search of a new home. There can be an infinite number of planets in the universe on which humans can theoretically live. One of the main ingredients, the planet must orbit the star in its habitable zone. This means the temperature must allow the water to be liquid. We find similar star systems almost every year and have recently found the nearest one. It's Proxima Centauri. There are at least 2 planets around this red dwarf on which we can build our new home. But the problem is that this system is as far as 4.2 light-years away. So we had to open our garage and choose a vehicle that could take us so far. Saturn V is a rocket that used to take humans to the moon. It could reach the speed 30 times faster than the speed of sound. Today, we have more advanced technologies, like the SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket. However, its speed is still about the same. It would take such a rocket about 113,000 years to overcome the distance to the closest star. So, you walk through the garage further and see the fastest human-made space object ever, the Parker Solar Probe. Its speed is a little less than 500,000 miles per hour, but it uses the gravity of the Sun to accelerate. Let's assume we can build a rocket that can reach this speed. Now, we sit behind a star map, do calculations, draw diagrams, and 6,600 years. And now, let's look at the photon. These are the tiniest particles that travel at the speed of light. And an obvious thought comes to your mind. How do you build a ship that can travel as fast as a photon? Well, until recently, travel at this speed was considered impossible. Fundamental laws of physics say that no object that has a mass can accelerate this much. Energy is required to accelerate mass. And to reach the speed of light, which is about 186,000 miles per second, we need an infinite amount of energy. But it's still too slow. Raise your eyes and look at the Sun. It's so close to us, but the light from it reaches our planet in 8 minutes, about the time it takes to go through the drive-thru and get your burger. And the journey to the nearest star will take 4.2 years. You can graduate from college during such a period. But we may have found a way to cheat the laws of physics and travel faster than light. Warp drive. It's a technology that manipulates space and time to break the laws of motion. In science fiction, it's a kind of field that envelops a spacecraft like a bubble or a shell and allows it to significantly exceed the speed of light. And we already have a similar technology, sort of. It's the Alcubierre warp drive. Since it's impossible to move at the speed of light in normal space-time, the ship must move by compressing the space in front of it and expanding it behind it. So not only the ship itself moves, but so does the space-time inside this bubble. In fact, this will allow the spacecraft to move at any speed, even 10 times faster than the speed of light. But to warp space-time, the ship must be simply humongous in size. It will need the quantity of energy comparable to the amount of mass energy of the whole planet of Jupiter. But at recent symposiums, scientists began to say that there is hope. In 2069, NASA plans to launch an interstellar mission to explore inhabitable planets outside our solar system. We do not yet know the details of this mission. It doesn't even have a name yet, but it will be dedicated to the 100th anniversary of the Apollo mission, the first man landing on the moon's surface. Here, near Pasadena, California, a small group of scientists from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab are trying their best to make it happen, and their latest calculations have made everyone shout Eureka! It turns out the ring around the ship, which should create the so-called warp field, shouldn't be perfectly round as it was thought before. It's more like donut-shaped. This will greatly simplify the design and construction. And the best part, to test this technology, a spacecraft the size of Voyager 1 probe will suffice. Researchers are now aiming to reach at least 10% of the speed of light and launch the probe to Alpha Centauri. In this case, to overcome the distance of 4.4 light-years, the probe will need about 44 years. For comparison, the Voyager 1 mission was launched on September 5, 1977. In 43 years, it's traveled about 14 billion miles and is the most remote human-made object. It's also the loneliest one in the universe. It has long since left the boundaries of our solar system and is moving further into outer space. But rest assured, scientists have a couple more ideas in their secret laboratories. There are rumors now that they know how to reach the speed of light. The Space Association is considering launching small drones powered by lasers. Nuclear force, as well as collisions of matter and antimatter, can give enough energy to accelerate an object to the speed of light too. But their colleagues in a nearby laboratory are working hard to implement another technology, ion propulsion. It uses gas particles accelerated by the electric field. Simply put, your regular rocket is a daredevil on the road. He pulls the throttle to the max and burns an incredible amount of fuel to accelerate to the speed he needs. But ion propulsion is a careful old lady driving. She slowly presses the gas pedal and accelerates. On the scale of space, the old lady will have more efficiency and will be able to drive much further than the daring young man. Something we'll keep an eye on. Still, an unknown number of years will pass until there's a way to implement warp drive or ion propulsion. We want to make humankind interstellar, but first, we need to keep it alive at least. Now we're actively developing technologies to send the first manned mission to Mars. Colonization of Mars will be the first stage to make our species interstellar. It'll be a kind of rehearsal before colonizing distant planets. We must understand that although the conditions on the exoplanets may be close to earthly ones, we will still have to terraform them. We must test our technology on Mars to warm it up to the normal Earth temperature. We also need to increase atmospheric pressure so that water could exist in a liquid state, and create an ozone layer that will protect us from solar radiation. After that, we'll be able to breathe freely on the surface of Mars without spacesuits. We need to master all these technologies before we can create a real warp drive. Centuries ago, people sailed the oceans and perfected their ships to fully explore our planet. Now, we will be the generation to build new ships and go on long journeys outside the Earth. Warp drive will open up incredible horizons for us. Take a look at our galaxy. There are countless stars. Around each of them may be planets, and on some of them, there may be life. Warp drive will allow us to get in contact with this life and explore our galaxy much faster. And this future is already close. Soon, we'll have the chance to join the pioneers, put on beautiful suits, and travel the expanses of space in search of adventure.
So, time travel is real. Actually, you're traveling through time right now. With every second of this video, you move 1 second into the future. But there's one person on Earth who has managed to time travel a little further into the future, 0.02 of a second. And that's not the limit. Meet Sergei Krikalev. He's an astronaut who spent 803 days, 9 hours, and 39 minutes on the International Space Station. That's the key to his time travel. The point is that for two objects, one standing still and the other moving, time flow is different. That is, if we take our planet as one object and the ISS as the other, time on Earth and on the ISS will go differently. But this is not enough to significantly affect time. We need to look at gravity. The larger the object, the stronger its gravitational force. For example, on the Moon, you can jump higher and lift heavier objects than on Earth because the Moon is light. But on Jupiter, you can barely stand on your feet because it's heavy and its gravity is many times stronger. Gravity bends space-time itself. Imagine a trampoline or a stretched sheet. As long as there's nothing on it, space-time is even, and time is the same at all points. But put a heavy object there, and you'll see a pit forming in it. Now imagine putting a heavy object like the planet Earth in the center of the sheet. It weighs 6 tons, plus another 21 zeros. It would bend our sheet so much that time would go differently in the center than in a place where space-time is flat. And the heavier the object, the greater the warp, and the slower time will go there. For example, near the Sun, time goes even slower than on our planet because it's more than 300,000 times heavier. Or take a black hole. Even a small one weighs tens or hundreds of times more than the Sun. And supermassive ones are millions and billions of times heavier. They will bend space-time so much that time near them practically stops. So, our hero, Sergei Krikalev, used this very method of time travel. He just wasn't at the very depth of this time-space vortex, but on the ISS. It's at a point in space-time where the curvature of the sheet isn't that strong. And time went a little faster for him than it does here. Just a little bit. And if you spend enough time there, gradually, you start to overtake the people here on Earth in time. Sergei could have gone much farther in time, but another law of physics prevented him from doing so. It's all about the unity of space and time. If you're standing, you're only moving in time. But if you run forward, you move both in time and space. The faster you run through space, the slower you move in time. The International Space Station travels around our planet at 4.7 miles per second. This speed slowed down Sergei's movement through time. So in more than 2 years on the ISS, he only traveled in time by 2/100ths of a second. So here's a way that you can time travel. Seat your friend at a table and give them one watch. Put the other one on your arm and start running around the table. If you run fast and long enough, you'll notice how the time on your watch and your friend's is different. Voila! You have traveled through time. But there are other ways to get to the future. For the first way, you need to get to a black hole. The closest one is just over 1,000 light years away from our solar system. You jump into your faster-than-light spaceship and arrive there. You need to fly as close as possible to its center, to the very edge of the event horizon. Space-time is so warped here that 1 second can be equal to weeks or even months on Earth. So just wait here for a few minutes. Now, turn the hyperdrives back on and fly away. Of course, you have to be careful here. Black holes are so heavy that nothing can escape their gravitational force. Even light, which is the fastest thing in the universe, can't escape a black hole's embrace. But that's no problem for you, and you're already on your home planet. Wow, it's been decades on Earth while you've been away. There are flying cars, robots, and holograms everywhere. Another option is traveling at the speed of light. You and your friend are standing on the starting line at the stadium, and each of you has a stopwatch. Press start, you run at the speed of light around the Earth a few times, and finish. Stop the clock. The time with which you ran your sprint is less than that of your friend who is standing still. But there's a so-called twin paradox that scientists are still racking their brains over. It's all about what to take as a reference point. If the center of the coordinate system is a person standing still, and the other is running at the speed of light, then the runner's clock will lag after the run, because they were moving not only in time, but also in space, remember? But if you take the runner as the reference point, it was the static person who was in motion relative to them. And then the static person's clock would have to be behind. So as a result of the experiment, both guys' clocks, the runner and the static guy, would show the same time. This is the twin paradox. Another way to cheat the laws of physics and stop the flow of time is to get into the plank position. Then time just stops for you. Okay, just kidding. Assuming that traveling back in time is possible, there's a whole bunch of problems and paradoxes. For example, at 12 p.m., you're engaged in building a time machine. At 12:30, you finish building it. And then, at 1 p.m., you enter it for one purpose: to prevent you from building the time machine yourself. Then you go back in time at 12:20, when the time machine is almost finished, and break one of its details so that it can't be built to start with. But if your younger version couldn't build a time machine, then there's no way that you could get to the past either, right? Or what if you did build a time machine and went back in time to your father when he was on a date with your mom? You ruin their date and they break up. In this case, your birth would have been impossible. But if you hadn't been born, you would never have built a time machine and gone back in time to ruin your daddy's date. And then nothing would have interfered with your birth. Wow, things are getting a little too complicated. Okay, there are simpler ways to travel through time. For example, biological ones. I'm talking about freezing. If you freeze your body, you will move through time with the rest of the world, but you'll be asleep the whole time. And when you wake up, you'll be in the future. By the way, animals that hibernate in winter, like bears, are time travelers. They simply skip the hungry winter seasons. But there's one problem with that. When we freeze, the water in our cells and tissues turns to ice, and as a consequence, they feel dehydrated, like in a desert. This can be avoided by using protective chemicals. But the hardest part is the awakening. Our scientists can't safely unfreeze a living organism. So, for now, freezing your body is a one-way ticket. But we have hope that scientists of the future will find a way to avoid damaging cells and tissues. Then, they'll open refrigerators with people and wake up a whole bunch of time travelers. And that's a pretty expensive adventure. Freezing an entire body can cost $200,000 or more. But many people believe that time travel is already real, and some time travelers have been caught in photographs or camera footage. For example, this photo from 1941. There are men in suits and women in elegant hats, and among them, this guy in futuristic glasses and hoodie. Or this video, where you can see a woman in the background, talking on her cell phone. Wow, that was about a century ago, and back then, no one could imagine what a cell phone was. Well, these facts can be easily explained. The man in the photo is wearing glasses that were made back in 1920, and the t-shirt and hoodie also already existed at that time. And the woman talking on the cell phone is actually holding an acousticon in her hand. It's kind of a hearing aid, one of the first of its kind. So we can say one thing for sure: time travel remains just a dream for all people. Except Sergei Krikalev, who was able to trick the laws of physics and be 0.02 of a second ahead of all the people on Earth.
Okay, so you've seen the movies and read the books on time travel. Most of them tell stories about entering some futuristic boxes, and in the blink of an eye, you're in some different epoch. For now, this is just sci-fi. But there are ways to make time travel possible, at least theoretically. We just don't have the technology figured out yet. For starters, time travel to the future could be achieved by traveling at high speeds, but not just getting a ticket on the superhighway kind of speed. This is based on Einstein's theory of special relativity. It explains that time slows down for objects that move at really high speeds. And the good news is scientists have already tested this theory, and it looks promising. They did it with the help of two identical clocks. One was placed on a jet, and one stayed on the ground. They found that the clock on the jet ticked slower than the one on the ground because of how fast the jet was moving. The faster an object is moving, the more time will slow down for it. Currently, the fastest speeds achieved by human technology are seen in a special type of particles called neutrinos. Some of these can move at almost the speed of light. At these speeds, 1 second for the protons is equal to 11 months for us. Now, we might be able to time travel to the future with the use of gravity, too. This idea is based on Einstein's findings, namely his theory of general relativity. Now, this theory explains that the stronger gravity is, the more slowly time moves. This means that as you get closer to the center of the Earth, the strength of gravity increases. And if you think about it like that, time actually passes more slowly for your feet than for your head. Now, is that why I'm always late for stuff? Good excuse. This effect has been measured too, with the help of the same strategy with two identical clocks. Scientists placed them on shelves at different heights and measured the rate of ticking. The clock on the lower shelf ticked more slowly because it experienced a slightly stronger gravity. But this option comes with a catch. To be able to travel to the far future, you'll need to find a place with extremely strong gravity, like a black hole. That's a point in space where the gravity has so much force that even light cannot escape it. There, gravity becomes so intense that matter gets squeezed into a tiny space. The closer you get to the black hole, the more slowly time moves. However, traveling via a black hole is very dangerous, mostly because it's a one-way ticket. Once you cross its edges, there's no coming back. Now, here's a fun fact. The GPS systems we use on our phones and in our cars already have to account for time dilation effects in order to work properly. That's because of the speed of the satellites they use and the gravity they feel here on Earth. Without these corrections, your phone's GPS wouldn't be able to pinpoint your location on Earth very precisely. Meanwhile, the third option has less to do with the universe's unknown forces and more to do with our own bodies. Scientists are trying to find ways to time travel to the future by slowing down the body's own processes. It's not time travel per se. You wouldn't technically be going anywhere. But if your body stays put for a long period of time, you could eventually wake up in the future. Some animals, like bears and squirrels, can slow down their metabolism during hibernation, which means they don't need as much food and oxygen to survive. Specialists are trying to figure out if humans can do the same thing. They're working on ways to make people go into a short-term hibernation for a few hours to begin with. This could be helpful for medical emergencies too, in order to help a person before they can safely get to the hospital. In 2005, scientists were able to slow down the metabolism of mice by exposing them to a small amount of special gas. However, when they tried to do the same thing with larger animals, it did not work as effectively. Our fourth option of traveling through time is really unique. It involves a special type of shortcuts that may exist in our universe called wormholes. Now, before we move on, let's try to understand what they are. You'll need to picture two balls and a trampoline. If there's no pressure applied on the trampoline, it stays flat. Now imagine the two balls placed on the trampoline symmetrically. If you look at them from this perspective, there's no possibility of them ever touching. But if you put enough pressure on the trampoline between the two balls, this flexible fabric can stretch so much that the two objects might potentially touch each other. The same thing happens with stars in different star systems. They're big enough to curve space around them. That's why most planets tend to orbit around a star. The tunnel between those 2 points would be a wormhole. These wormholes could be used to travel long distances, like 1 billion light-years, or even visit different times. Now, many scientists, like Stephen Hawking, think that wormholes might appear and disappear, but be very small, smaller than atoms. The problem is that we don't know how to catch one and make it bigger so that people can use it. This would take a lot of energy, and we don't know if it's even possible. Some astronomers say that even if we could find a wormhole and enter it, it would rapidly collapse on itself. Even the tiniest bit of extra mass, like that of our bodies for example, can result in the wormhole slamming shut, like a rubber band that's been stretched too much. Now, the fifth solution for time traveling was proposed by an American physicist named Ron Mallett. It involves one resource that we know for sure is abundant in the universe – light. The scientist proposed a theory about time travel that would use a rotating cylinder of light. He believes that if something was dropped inside this swirling cylinder, it could be moved in both space and time, similar to how a bubble moves when you swirl it with a spoon in your coffee. According to Mallett, the right shape of the cylinder could allow for traveling to both the past and the future. The physicist has been trying to raise money for an experiment to test his theory. This experiment involves dropping tiny particles, called neutrons, through a circular arrangement of spinning lasers. However, other scientists say Mallett's theory is impossible and there's no need to test it further. Well, even if we eventually figured out a way to travel back in the past or to the future, would it be safe? Scientists have been talking about a problem called the paradox of time travel for a long time. The main question is what would happen if you went back in time and did something that changed the future. However, a new study from researchers from the University of Queensland says that this problem might not be real after all. The scientists have done some calculations and found out that even if you had changed something in the past, the timeline would still end up the same way. Another variation of this problem is called the grandfather paradox. Imagine going back in time and preventing your own grandfather from having offspring. Come to think of it, it automatically means you shouldn't exist in the first place. If your grandparents didn't have your parents, how can you exist at all? Well, these days scientists are certain that even if you did experience something like that, you'd still exist in the present. That's because the timeline that already exists has a way of adjusting itself, regardless of where people are in time and what they do. Or somehow get 1.21 gigawatts in a DeLorean and make like Marty McFly. Okay, place those goggles over your eyes, strap in, and don't forget to hold on tight. We're gonna see how fast we can really go. Long legs and a tall yet muscular frame, not exactly the norm when compared to the shorter builds of short-distance runners. But the fastest man alive makes it look easy to move that fast. So far, the fastest anyone has run is just over 27 miles per hour, a speed reached briefly by sprinter Usain Bolt at the halfway point of his world record 100-meter dash. And humans can go even faster. The top speed we could reach may come down to how quickly the muscles in our body can move. Our muscles should be able to reach speeds as fast as 40 miles per hour. The reason we can't do it is that we're in the air for too long. Our limbs can only take a certain amount of force when they strike on the ground. That's why on skates, you're able to outpace a runner. Gliding allows for more traction. What would make us a lot faster is simple-ish. Longer legs, really wide hips, or extra legs, like an insect. I'd give running on all fours a try. It would be fun at least. In 2016, speed records weren't just broken on the running track, they were broken on the ski slopes in France. The world record for downhill skiing belongs to an Italian ski instructor and a mountain guide. In 2016, assisted only by gravity, the instructor set a human land speed record of around 158 miles per hour, skiing across the zone near the bottom of a course in just over 2 seconds. Wow, I can barely stand up on skis, let alone move half that fast. The fastest a tiger beetle can sprint is up to 5 miles per hour. Doesn't sound that fast really, but consider this. It's covering 120 of its body lengths in a single second. For comparison, Bolt covers about 6 body lengths per second. To match this beetle, he'd have to run about 480 miles per hour. That's twice as fast as a peregrine falcon. Tiger beetles have extremely sharp eyesight for insects, but while they're running, the world turns into a featureless smudge. This means the beetle has to stop every now and then and see where it's going. So they're pretty fast, but there's a mite, a special mite, whose speed is equivalent to a human running roughly 1,300 miles per hour. At its quickest, this sesame seed-sized mite can move 322 body lengths per second. Wow! Most cats run 0 times their body length for the majority of the day. Yeah. Well, we're not going to be moving that fast anytime soon. We've got a few tricks up our sleeve, thanks to our big brains. We can use technology. Ooh. The fastest we've ever traveled on land over 1 mile is 763 miles per hour. It was done back in 1997 in Nevada in a thrust SSC. That's a big improvement from the first holder of the record. In 1898, a Frenchman hit the actually pretty amazing speed of 39 miles per hour in his electric-powered car. Through the air, we've traveled at Mach 3.3, that's around 2,100 miles per hour. It's all thanks to the fastest jet aircraft in the world, the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird. Amazingly, this plane doesn't have a top speed. The only thing limiting its speed is temperature. If it was allowed to fly as fast as it wanted, it would literally melt in midair. On water, the speed record is just over 275 knots, or a little over 317 miles per hour. A jet-powered hydroplane called the Spirit of Australia did it back in 1978. Not bad if you want to get to your favorite fishing spot quickly. In 1896, there weren't that many driving laws, but still, Walter Arnold decided to break one of them and became the first man in history to receive a speeding ticket. The speed limit at the time was 2 miles per hour. You could have walked faster, and most people did. But that was too slow for Arnold, who decided to race through the town at 8 miles per hour. Eventually, he was caught and received a 1 shilling fine, quite hefty for the time. A man named Felix was taken over 127,000 feet into the edge of space in a balloon that, when fully inflated, was about the size of the Statue of Liberty. Having no choice but to jump out, he eventually reached the fastest freefall speed ever, 843 miles per hour, in a specially designed suit, of course. Landing back on solid ground in just over 9 minutes, he became the first person to break the sound barrier in freefall. The fastest speed a human has ever traveled is around 25,000 miles per hour. The crew of Apollo 10 reached this on May 26, 1969. This was also the highest speed ever reached by a manned vehicle. Are you feeling the hankering for speed yet? Good news! The Earth rotates once roughly every 24 hours. Math. This means that the Earth and you are spinning at around 1,000 miles per hour. That's not including how fast we're all moving through space on this giant rock. We're zipping along at 18 miles per second. That's 67,000 miles per hour through the dark vacuum of space. Our Sun and the Milky Way appear to be moving at an average speed of 448,000 miles per hour through space. While that sounds extremely fast, and it is, it'd still take about 230 million years to travel all the way around the Milky Way. So, you're probably moving a lot faster than you thought you were. But there's a good reason you're not a human puddle right now. Speed obviously isn't the issue. The real issue is acceleration. Changes in speed are expressed in g-forces, which just means the acceleration of an object relative to Earth's gravity. If you're sitting on the sofa, you're experiencing 1 g. Now, most of us can withstand up to 4 to 6 g's, like on a roller coaster. Some pilots manage up to about 9 g's for a second or two. But sustained g-forces are a big problem. Some pilots wear special high G suits and are trained to flex their torso muscles to keep blood from whooshing out of their heads and into their legs. They can still operate their aircraft properly at about 9 Gs. The record for temporary Gs is an amazing 82.6 Gs. Riding a rocket-powered sled backward in 1958, Eli Beating Jr. hit the brakes and stopped in a tenth of a second as part of testing for space travel. Blacking out but only suffering back bruises, it was a remarkable demonstration of the body's resilience to short bursts of deceleration. More than 100 years ago, a super-famous scientist named Einstein came up with an idea called relativity. There was an experiment that tested this out with 2 clocks set to the exact same time. One clock stayed on Earth, while the other flew on a commercial plane. After the airplane returned from its trip around the world, the 2 clocks were compared. The clock on the fast-moving plane was slightly behind the other one. So yes, time travel is a real thing if you're going faster than another object. Now, another place time slows down is when you're in line at the checkout stand at the supermarket. But hey, it's all relative. The safest place to test high-speed travel is space. It's an empty vacuum after all. But imagine speeding through space. Anything the size of a grain of sand would become a high-speed projectile. The real danger, though, would be small hydrogen atoms just floating around. The hydrogen would shatter into particles that would pass into the ship. It wouldn't be pretty. Your spacecraft would also heat up really quickly, too. Sounds dangerous. You go first.
You're hovering about 18 miles above the surface of Earth and enjoying the best view of our planet. Whoa, that's a starfall! Make a wish. And that bright dot that's moving very fast is the International Space Station. And then, the waiter brings you a drink. Wait, why is there a waiter? Well, the thing is, you're on a tourist spaceship, and very soon everyone will be able to fly into space with giant balloons. This is Neptune. It's a round capsule with panoramic windows and a 360-degree view. It can take on board 9 people in comfortable seats, including 8 passengers and 1 pilot. It also has an under-deck toilet. As the manufacturers say, it's the toilet with the best view in the universe. There's also a luggage compartment for tools and scientific equipment in the roof of the capsule, a Wi-Fi connection that will even allow live streaming, and there's a bar with refreshments. Space Perspective, the creators of Neptune's plan to price passenger tickets starting at $150,000. And there's no rocket engines, are there? This thing will go up thanks to a giant balloon the size of a football field. Let's move to the launch pad. Passengers enter the capsule. Engineers fill the balloon with hydrogen. It's lighter than air, so the balloon begins to take off. When the thrust becomes sufficient, the capsule with the passengers takes off from the launch pad. The journey begins. The capsule and balloon go up at 12 miles per hour. That's twice as slow as a person can run, and 2,000 times slower than a conventional rocket takes off. So you won't experience hard overloads, vibration, and noise like you would on a conventional rocket. So you're already at 45,000 feet. It's almost halfway there. This is where commercial airplanes fly. This is the frontier where the weather ceases to exist. No clouds, no wind currents or turbulence, but no oxygen either. You'd need an oxygen tank to breathe here, but the Neptune capsule is airtight, so you keep climbing. You also notice that the balloon has grown up several times. This is because we filled the balloon with hydrogen at 0 altitude. The hydrogen was putting pressure on the balloon from the inside, but the air from the atmosphere was putting pressure on the balloon from the outside. But the higher up you go, the less air there is. Hydrogen continues to pressurize the balloon from the inside, but now nothing is stopping it from expanding. So we need a very dense material that can stretch for the balloon. Humanity launches such balloons with weather probes all the time. They take off and get bigger as they ascend. But at extreme altitudes, the balloon material can't withstand the pressure, and it pops. The weather probe falls to the ground. We don't want the capsule with people to fall, so Neptune won't take off that high. But in case of emergency, Neptune has a parachute for safe landing. It's already deployed, and it's attached to the rope that goes to the balloon. So in case of unforeseen events, the parachute will instantly open, and the capsule will begin its slow descent. The entire takeoff procedure lasts 2 hours, and you reach the 100,000 feet mark. In human history, only about 20 people went to the stratosphere by balloon. The capsule hangs in the air. Now you and all the passengers have 2 hours to admire the curvature of the Earth, take endless selfies, and relax. You can even see a blue stripe over the surface of the planet. That's our atmosphere. And if you look up, you can see the most beautiful starry sky of your life. Because there are no clouds or light pollution from the big cities at this altitude, and you can see the stars in all their glory. For the same reason, we send our telescopes to this altitude. 2 hours have passed. It's time for the descent. This procedure is slow and gentle too. The balloon is lowered. Atmospheric pressure begins to press on it again, and it shrinks in size. The capsule will land on the water. It has a splashdown cone at the bottom for this purpose. This thing will help dampen the impact on the water so that everything happens softly and smoothly. 2 more hours of descent have passed. The Neptune touches the water. Now a ship is approaching the capsule. It takes the passengers on board and takes them to the shore. It also takes the capsule itself on board for relaunch into the stratosphere. But the balloon itself can no longer be used for a new trip. As soon as the passengers touch the ground, their journey is over. The first person to ascend to the stratosphere in a balloon was this Swiss man, Auguste Piccard. He designed this round gondola. It was airtight and could take 2 people on board. The gondola was attached to a huge balloon as big as a basketball court. As with Neptune, the balloon was filled with hydrogen. In May 1931, Auguste Piccard and Paul Kipfer began their flight. As they gained altitude, they discovered several problems. The airtightness of the capsule was bad. Air would escape from the capsule, but they were able to fix the problem. They were climbing higher and it was getting colder outside, but the temperature inside the gondola reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit because the crew couldn't control the air release valve, so they felt like they were in a hot desert. August's gondola reached an altitude of 51,775 feet, only 16,000 feet higher than commercial airplanes fly now, and 17.5 hours after launch, Auguste landed back on the ground. During this and other flights, the scientists collected a lot of data about the wind in these layers of the atmosphere and cosmic rays. He was also the first person to send a radio signal to Earth from such an altitude. Later, Auguste Piccard used the idea of a fully airtight gondola to dive to extreme depths. He created a bathyscaphe, capable of descending to the deepest point on our planet, the Mariana Trench. Even though the Neptune is much more advanced, it still can't fly into space. It's not even close to it. So this is where Auguste Piccard was able to fly to. Here is the maximum altitude of the Neptune, but space much higher. This is the Kármán line, about 62 miles above sea level. Humanity considers this to be the boundary of our planet, so the tourists in the Neptune capsule won't even be able to feel weightlessness. But if you want to become a space tourist and dance in zero gravity, there are a few more options for you. This is a crude, suborbital reusable spacecraft. The journey starts on a regular runway, just like a commercial airplane. Here you can see the unusual White Knight II aircraft. It's as long as a tennis court and consists of 2 fuselages. Because of this, it has a wingspan as wide as a soccer field, and our Spaceship Two is attached right between these fuselages. So, White Knight II takes off like an ordinary airplane and reaches an altitude of about 12.5 miles. Then Spaceship Two undocks and begins an independent upward flight. This small spacecraft is the size of a swimming pool. It's controlled by 2 pilots and carries 6 passengers. Ignition. The rocket engine is on, and the spacecraft begins to gain altitude. The pilots and passengers have reached about 282,000 feet, almost 3 times higher than the Neptune balloon. The passengers were able to experience weightlessness for a while. Then the Spaceship Two began to land. The pilots didn't start engines anymore, they just glided in the air. Then the spacecraft released the landing gear and landed on the runway like a regular airplane. The creator of this company, which owns Spaceship Two, plans to carry out such tourist flights into space more often. The ticket for such a trip will start at $450,000. That's 3 times more than the flight on the Neptune balloon. If that's too much for you, we have another option for flying into space. This is the New Shepard spacecraft. This thing consists of a propulsion module and a crew capsule. It launches just like a conventional rocket, vertical takeoff, fast acceleration, and high overloads. The propulsion module helps the capsule reach a speed of about 2,230 miles per hour. At that speed, you could cross the United States from coast to coast in just 1 hour. The booster rocket climbed to an altitude of 65.7 miles. At this point, the crew capsule undocked and reached an altitude of 66.5 miles. The 4 passengers on board at this point felt weightless for several minutes. At this time, the launch vehicle descended to the ground and then made a successful landing. A few minutes later, the crew capsule began its descent. It launched 3 parachutes for braking. Just a few feet before touching the ground, the capsule makes a quick launch of the rocket engines to slow down completely and make the landing as soft as possible. You can become a space tourist and experience weightlessness on this rocket for only $250,000.
You're flying through space, dodging stars and black holes. Your speed is so great that you can get from one galaxy to another in just a few minutes. Sound far-fetched? Well, all this can become a reality because NASA has already tested the technology that might allow us to travel faster than the speed of light. Let's look at the space fleet people have now. To fly into space, we use conventional rockets carrying tons of fuel and oxygen. These 2 substances get mixed and ignited. Fire bursts out of the rockets. The exhaust gases move downward and the rockets move upward, as if pushing off of them. That's how jet propulsion works. This way, we can make the rocket move at almost 5 miles per second. At that speed, you could cross the United States from coast to coast in a mere 8.5 minutes. But if we talk about space, that's very slow. A trip to a neighboring planet, like Mars, takes about 7 months, and a trip to the edge of the solar system would take about 35 years. That's how long it took the Voyager space probe, launched in 1977, to get there. But we want to travel between stars and galaxies, and the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, is 4.2 light-years away from our home. That would take about 73,000 years to get there. That's longer than intelligent human civilization has even existed. And if you wanted to travel across the whole Milky Way galaxy, which is 100,000 light-years wide, it would take you about 1.7 trillion years. By comparison, the entire universe is 14 billion years old. People just travel too slowly. But even at the speed of light, it would still take 4.2 years to travel to the nearest star, and you'd spend 2.5 million years to get to the nearby Andromeda galaxy. But we can't accelerate like this. That's because the laws of physics say that an object with mass can't travel at the speed of light. A photon of light has an infinitely small weight, but if you want to accelerate even a tiny grain of sand to that speed, you'd need an infinite amount of energy, maybe even more than the entire universe has. But scientists might have found a way around the laws of physics. To create thrust, you need to push off of something. Ships need water. Planes push off of the air. Rockets use the fuel they burn. But this thing, the M drive, works in a different way. A powerful magnetron, like the one in your microwave, sends waves into this cone. It's a resonator. It makes the waves inside bounce off of one of the walls and hit the others. As a result, we have a weak force at the narrow end of the cone and a strong force at the wide end. And if we analyze this powerful force, we'll see that it is directed toward the wide end of the cone. So, the thrust will be in the opposite direction. Now, let's make this model much, much larger and put the M drive on a spaceship. The narrow end of the cone faces up. The wide end is turned downward. The magnetron starts to work. The resonator creates thrust, and the rocket takes off. It makes no noise and doesn't emit any harmful gases at all. This mechanism can accelerate the rocket much faster than we do with tons of fuel. In theory, we could even reach the speed of light. Sounds great, but in reality, it isn't. Although the inventor of this device tried to prove the M drive works, no independent experiment around the world has shown positive results. NASA sponsored the construction of such a machine in a laboratory, but it didn't create any thrust during the research. Another option that would allow us to travel much faster than the speed of light is the Alcubierre bubble. A Mexican scientist has figured out a way to use the general theory of relativity without breaking the laws of physics. Let's say we have a spaceship on a space-time blanket, and it needs to make a trip to the other end of the blanket. Instead of just moving from point A to point B hundreds of thousands of light years away, the ship starts pulling the blanket toward itself. As the spacecraft folds the blanket, point B moves toward it. Now the ship needs to travel a much shorter distance to point B. It makes a quick trip and then straightens the time-space blanket back to normal. Voila! So such a spaceship doesn't need powerful engines that will burn tons of fuel and oxygen. It would move in a kind of bubble. But the hardest part is creating such a bubble. To do this, we would need an amount of energy roughly equal to the mass energy of all of Jupiter. That's more than we can produce on Earth. And still, scientists are planning to test this technology on a small space probe the size of Voyager. But this experiment might last for decades, or even centuries. Now scientists are trying to reach at least 20% of the speed of light using a laser. And they're planning to get to Proxima Centauri in about 30 years. It's likely to happen like this. A mothership will launch from Earth. It'll carry thousands of fingernail-sized space probes. After reaching orbit, the mothership will launch the probes into space. Each probe will then deploy a sail, a thin, reflective piece of material the size of a parking lot. Then people will focus a powerful laser beam from Earth directly onto the probe's sails. This will give them an acceleration 1,000 times as strong as the acceleration of free fall on Earth. One by one, the probes will launch and head for their destination. We won't even have to maintain that laser beam all the time. If you turn off the engines of a regular ship on the water, it'll start to lose speed due to friction with the water. But space is an almost perfect vacuum. There's literally nothing there, so there's no friction. All we have to do is accelerate the probes to the needed speed. At 20% of the speed of light, these probes could reach the Sun in just 40 minutes. But instead, they will head for the star Proxima Centauri. After about 30 years of travel, 4 more years will pass before we get a signal from the probes. There are several exoplanets in this system, and some scientists hope to find at least traces of life there. But this sail technology can be used in space even without a powerful laser. We can use the Sun. If we create a sail the size of a soccer field and unfold it in space, it'll start catching the Sun's rays. And since the surface of the sail is reflective, the rays will bounce off the sail. This will create thrust and propel the spacecraft. One disadvantage of this technology is that we can only use it inside the solar system. In cold interstellar space, the sail won't be able to catch the Sun's rays or solar wind. Another candidate for faster-than-light travel is an ion thruster. Like a conventional rocket, a spacecraft with ion thrusters would be propelled by gas ejected outward. Only, in this case, the gas would be ejected not because of fuel combustion, but because of an electric field. We'd need to create a powerful electric field inside the engine. Particles of gas passing through this electric field would get accelerated and ejected outside. This would create thrust. And although the acceleration in such an engine would be many times weaker than in a conventional rocket, the ion engine would be able to reach higher speeds. NASA was planning to build an ion-powered spacecraft to fly to Jupiter. Ion engines consume a lot of energy, so the ship was to be equipped with a nuclear reactor and lots of solar panels. 8 large engines were supposed to accelerate the spacecraft to about 56 miles per second. At this speed, the trip from New York to London would take 1 minute. So far, this technology has been actively tested on different space probes, but it can't provide a solution to how to travel faster than the speed of light. Perhaps people will still be able to travel between galaxies in conventional rockets, but they'll need to use some sort of shortcuts called wormholes. So, back to our space-time blanket. Point A lies at one end, and point B is at the other. Instead of traveling across the entire blanket for millions of years, you can simply fold it. Then point B will be right above point A, and you can quickly get there through a short tunnel between them. Such tunnels are called wormholes. Some scientists believe that wormholes can be inside black holes. But there are 2 problems here. The nearest black hole is 1,500 light-years away, so a trip there would take eons. The second problem is the hole's gravity. Black holes have the strongest gravitational pull of any object in the universe. Their gravity can crush any spacecraft. That's because the gravitational force increases with every inch you move closer to the black hole's center, and the force affecting the nose of the spaceship will be much stronger than the force that affects the tail. The spaceship will stretch out like spaghetti and get torn apart. But there's a theory claiming that a spacecraft or even a person can survive falling into a black hole, but only if the black hole is supermassive, like the ones that lie in the centers of galaxies. They can be millions and billions of times heavier than the Sun. But even though they're heavier, they're also bigger in size. This means gravity probably doesn't increase so fast there. You or your spacecraft might not turn into spaghetti, and might even get to see what's at the heart of the black hole.
You're traveling by train and hear the wheels banging against the tracks, but suddenly the train rises and gains altitude. None of the passengers scream in panic because this is a regular thing now. Well, maybe not yet, but it might become our reality anytime soon. Aka Technologies Company is developing such a project. Their goal is to reduce travel time and make trips more comfortable. To travel today, you need to get to the airport, spend a few hours there at the check-in and security check. And only after that can you board the plane. When the plane lands, you need to go through standard airport procedures again and then get to the city. Only after this, your trip is over. It means you use at least 3 different types of transport. But with Link and Fly from Aka Technologies, you can get to your destination without any transfers. This is a train the size of an Airbus A320. It's as long as 4 school buses and can hold about 162 passengers. Since it's a train, it can run on the subway tracks right to the city center. So when you begin a trip, you just need to get to the nearest subway station. Once you're on the train, it takes you to the nearest airport, and there, the fun part begins. The train makes a quick stop to get the wings and jet engines attached. So now, your train has a wingspan as wide as a soccer field. The engines start, the train accelerates and takes off. After the flying train lands, the wings get detached again, and you're on your way downtown and your destination, with no transfers. Without having to wait for a cab, and again, you can get off at any subway station. Transformer planes that can drive around the city are the distant future. For now, this company is developing a simpler solution to reduce airport overloads. Instead of having a plane parked right next to the gate, passengers will board the plane's fuselage right inside the airport's building. The fuselage will then pull out onto the runway, and the wings with the engines, as well as the cockpit with the pilots, will be attached. Here you go. The plane is ready for takeoff. This system will make boarding and takeoff 30 minutes faster than before. The company plans to make different types of removable fuselages. For short flights, they will have a capacity of about 160 people. There will be double-deck cabins for long-haul and higher-capacity flights. VIP cabins can be customized like a private jet, and if all the seats are removed, the cabin can be used as a cargo plane. Link and Fly has a special safety system in case the cabin separates from the wings during the flight. 3 parachutes at the front and 3 at the back of the cabin will deploy automatically. There are also braking rockets that can help to quickly reduce the speed. This way, the fuselage will descend slowly and safely. A few seconds before touching the ground, the cabin will launch airbags attached to the bottom of the fuselage for the softest possible landing. Another option for traveling faster is the Airbus Pop-Up. It's a kind of taxi that can travel by road and by air. In the future, you can simply order such a cab from your tablet, phone, or even smart glasses and wait for the vehicle to arrive. The car itself consists of a passenger pod half the size of a modern sedan. It can hold 2 people and has a futuristic design and interface. The second part is the ground module. It's the chassis and wheels for driving on conventional roads. You get into the pod, and after that, artificial intelligence does all the work for you. It steers the car safely and takes you to your destination. When you get out of the cab, the pod with the ground module is sent to the nearest charging station. For convenience, charging stations will be located throughout the city, so you won't have to wait long for a cab. But if your destination is far away, a more interesting ride awaits you. Like in the first case, you get into a pod on wheels. The ground module takes you to the nearest takeoff site. There, the capsule gets attached to the air module. This thing looks like a giant drone. It hooks the passenger capsule and flies up, separating the pod from the ground module. Now, it's a flying cab. You can enjoy the beauty of the city from above. When you land on a special platform, the pod reconnects with the ground module, and you proceed to your destination, while the air module charges for the next trip. Rockets might be another revolution in long-distance travel. For now, we use them to fly into space, but in the future, they might completely replace airplanes. Let's say you're going from New York to Shanghai, which is on the other side of the planet. The launching pad of the rocket can be on the water, somewhere in Lower Bay. You board a ferry that will take you to the rocket. Once you reach it, you take your seat along with the other passengers. Countdown. Ignition. The rocket takes off and reaches space. It's now traveling at about 16,800 miles per hour. When in orbit, the launch vehicle undocks from the passenger rocket and heads back to the landing station. There, it will be refueled and prepared for the next launch. At this time, the rocket with the passengers will use its own engine to fly around Earth. It re-enters the atmosphere and lands on a platform on the water near Shanghai. This flight takes only 39 minutes compared to the 15 hours a conventional airplane needs. But there's a downside to such trips. A rocket makes a lot more noise, so landing platforms have to be far away from the cities. This will increase travel time. The other problem is G-force. Standing on the ground, you feel 1 G. When you take off in a normal airplane, you feel about 1.5 G. But when you travel by rocket, the G-force you'll experience will be twice as strong, and if it reaches 5 G, you'll pass out. Back to the ground. In 2010, the number of cars in the world exceeded 1 billion, and by 2030, this number is expected to double. So, we need to fight constant traffic jams on the roads. The elevated bus could be a great solution for that. This thing doesn't actually look like a bus. It's 2 lanes wide and can consist of several cars. Such a bus will be able to carry up to 1,200 passengers at maximum capacity, and it will run on regular roads. We'll need to equip the roads along its route with rails on both sides. The elevated bus itself will move at about 6.5 feet above the road. This is comparable to riding on the second floor of a London double-decker bus, and it won't interfere with traffic on the road. Regular cars will still be able to drive there. The elevated bus will be all electric and driven by autopilot. Its roof will have a large area entirely covered by solar panels. On cloudy days, it'll be powered directly from the rails. Passenger boarding will take place at special stations located above ground. For emergencies, there will be an inflatable ramp light in the middle of the bus. This way, passengers will be able to leave the bus safely. Some concepts of such a bus even suggest that the racks with the wheels should be able to rise, for example, to bypass an obstacle. If some car breaks down right in the way of the elevated bus, it'll lift one wheel rack, move forward, and lower the wheels back onto the rails. Then it'll do the same with the rear rack. This way, the bus will be able to move around the city at about 37 miles per hour. It's faster than driving in a traffic jam. Another option to avoid traffic is tunnels. You would be able to travel through them in your own car. A hypothetical tunnel system under large cities would have multiple entry points. You'd drive your car onto a special platform, and the platform would then be lowered down. It would accelerate in the tunnel to 124 miles per hour. You'd be able to get to the other end of the city in just a few minutes. The platform would then lift your car back to the surface, and you'd keep driving to your final destination. Tunnels can also be the future of traveling between cities. First, you'd have to arrive at some sort of a train station. There, you'd board a passenger pod. These pods would hold 4 to 6 passengers. Then it'd follow the tunnel, dock into a pod cluster, and connect with the transporter capsule. Special pumps would suck the air out of the tunnel, and the transporter capsule would move in an almost complete vacuum. Theoretically, this train would be able to reach speeds that are faster than those of commercial airplanes, and even faster than the speed of sound. So you could get from New York City to Los Angeles in 3.5 hours, compared to 6 hours by a conventional airplane. After reaching its destination, the transporter capsule would open, and the passenger pods would arrive at the station. In the future, these pods would be able to travel even on conventional roads. So you just need to order such a passenger pod to your home, just like a cab. This way, you'd have the opportunity to cross the United States from coast to coast without any transfers.
Ah yes, everyone loves a holiday. But figuring out what to pack in your luggage can be a daunting task, especially when you're limited on weight and baggage space. Not to mention, you're likely to do some holiday shopping on your adventure away from home. So, you're gonna need extra space on your return for all those souvenirs you've collected. Accumulating too much weight or bulk can end up costing you a handsome fee with the airline if you're not properly prepared. But you can now relax. You just focus on booking your vacation. We'll take care of your luggage with these handy traveling tips. No doubt your clothes are going to take up the bulk of your luggage. Considering most airline standards permit 1 bag for most local trips and up to 2 bags for longer distances, that doesn't grant you a whole lot of space if you plan on being fashionable on your getaway, especially in the winter. However, this doesn't mean you have to turn your undergarments inside out for repeated use. The key here is to be clever with how you pack. Firstly, you might want to consider how you're folding your clothes. The most space-efficient method to store your wardrobe in a suitcase for travel is to roll up each item. Think of your clothes like those sleeping bags you used to take on your camping trips. They always seem too thick for their compacted covers, but with perseverance, you could roll it up tight enough to fit inside. Now, you don't need to wrestle with your clothes quite as much, but the same principle here applies. Start by folding your shirts, pants, and whatever else you plan on packing neatly, similar to how you might find them on a clothing store shelf. Then, when you have them in a relatively rectangular or squared-off shape, roll them up tightly. Now that you have your little clothes logs, start packing them into your bag. And behold, extra space! Now, here's something we've all experienced arriving at our holiday destination. We drop our suitcase on the hotel bed, open it up, only to find all our clothes unfurled and scattered like a tornado stormed through our bag. Your luggage has had a rough journey from your home to your holiday destination. It's been dragged through airport terminals, tossed around by baggage handlers and rocked back and forth during in-flight turbulence. A simple stationary item, rubber bands, will help you keep your clothes neat. Now that you've got them rolled up, place a couple of rubber bands around them to keep them from unfurling. This is an especially neat trick if you want to roll an outfit together as one. Maybe you've got head-to-toe denim that you can't wait to rock on your getaway. Fold up your clothes as before, then layer the different items of your ideal outfit atop each other. Roll them up as one, then use the rubber bands to keep them together. You can preemptively decide your day-to-day outfits before you even board the plane. However, you may still prefer to fold your clothes, especially business or formal shirts and pants. Lucky for you, we have a handy trick for that too. Instead of folding each item individually, we're going to lay it out all on top of each other. Start with your shirts and tops, alternating with one on top and one on the bottom, keeping the necks of your shirts at the center. Work your way down to your pants and smaller items until they're all laid out flat. Try to keep your pants in the middle. Finally, start folding your items in on themselves, with the shirts creating the outer layer until you end up with a neat bundle, like a present. You should be able to sit your bundle squarely into your bag. Want to save even more luggage space? Instead of putting your undergarments and socks into their own section, try fitting them into available spaces and gaps within the rest of your luggage. If you plan on taking a cap with you, for instance, the inside of your headwear is a great space to store your socks. This applies to other small luggage items too, such as phone chargers and ties. Though keep in mind that you can also lay your ties and belts out flat across the clothes in your luggage to conserve space. And if you're really limited on baggage size, say all you have is a carry-on for a fortnight-long trip, here's another method. Get yourself some compression bags to store your clothes in. These bags will compact multiple sets of clothes into the size of a small laptop bag. Fold up the clothes you intend to pack and store them into the compression bag. You should be able to fit 8 to 10 standard clothes items or a few bulky ones. Once you've filled the bag, seal it and squeeze the air out through the built-in one-way pressure valve. The easiest way to do this is either by rolling it, and you should be pretty good at rolling your clothes by now, or by using your knees to apply pressure. You should be able to fit 2 to 4 of these compression bags in your standard carry-on suitcase, which is especially helpful if you want to save money by avoiding checked-in luggage. And you can take even more clothes on board with you if you stick them into a pillowcase. The best thing about this tip is that it also doubles as a comfy pillow for you to rest your head on during the flight. If you do have a bit more space to spare, another great way to keep your stuff organized is with packing cubes. It might not be as space efficient as compression bags, but a lot of travelers prefer them for tidier and well-organized packing. You might like to divide them by outfits or clothes types, such as one for pants and one for tops. You can easily purchase packing cubes from most online retail services and travel and camping stores. There are also packing cubes specially designed for one or more pairs of shoes. This is a great way to compact the space your shoes would otherwise take up in your luggage, and to keep your clean clothes from coming into contact with your footwear. Nobody wants their tops to smell like feet, right? If you're still struggling to bring all your items with you inside your suitcase, there are a couple more tricks that you can use for that extra bit of weight without the extra cost. The most obvious of which is to use your own body. That's right, time to layer up. Pick out all your bulky items and wear as many as you can manage. You can try wearing some shorts under your pants or several layers of your winter wear, such as your sweater, jacket, and coat, all over the top of one another. You might be sweating a little, but most airports and planes are well air-conditioned. You can always shed some layers once you've boarded your flight. At least you'll have some warm wear to snuggle up in if you do get cold up there in the clouds. If you don't want to wear all those layers, there's actually another type of bag you can carry on the plane with you, free of charge. Get yourself a duty-free bag from any of the duty-free stores in the airport. You can even hang on to it for next time. Store all your extra items in your duty-free bag and carry it onto your flight at no additional cost. It's also worth considering what type of luggage you're using. More importantly, how much it weighs. A lot of people forget that the standard 15 pounds permitted by most airlines includes the actual weight of their suitcase. The bag itself can often weigh up to 4 to 6 pounds. That's a huge chunk of your weight in the bag alone. So, when you're shopping for your luggage, take into account how much it weighs. Choosing a lighter bag will give you more space for the items you want to take with you. Stick to some of these handy tips and you'll be on your way with no shortage of luggage and some extra money to spend on your vacation. Happy flying!
Are the letters SSSS on your boarding pass a reason to worry? What's much more dangerous than turbulence? Should you really be the first to board the plane? You're about to figure it out. You might have noticed that most planes have blue seats. There's no mystery here. Airlines opt for this color because it's considered to have a calming effect. This color supposedly puts passengers at ease and helps even the most nervous flyers to relax. But there's also another, more practical reason. Stains, dirt, and scrapes are less visible on dark blue fabric. Never throw your boarding pass away in a public place. It contains tons of your sensitive information, including your name and frequent flyer number. This, in turn, may allow someone else to check your future bookings, change your seat, or even cancel your flights. So the best way to deal with the boarding pass for a flight you've already boarded is to take it home and feed it through a paper shredder. By the way, if you ever see the letters SSSS or S on your boarding pass, get ready for additional security checks. Instead of these letters, there may be a checkerboard pattern. Anyway, if you have any of these marks, your carry-on luggage can also undergo a thorough inspection. Why might they choose you for secondary screening? Some of the criteria are making a one-way reservation or paying cash for your ticket. In some cases, the selection is absolutely random. Look, your gate is open and the boarding is started. Wait, where are you running? There's no need to hurry. The trick experienced Globetrotters use is always board last. For one thing, you don't have to waste time standing in line. Then, there are fewer people on the jetway and in the aisle, and you spend less time on the plane. No one is going to take your seat anyway. There's one exception though. If you have a bulky carry-on bag, it may make more sense not to board last. Otherwise, the chances are high that all the overhead bin space will be occupied by the time you reach your seat. And then your bag may end up in another part of the plane, and you'll have to wait till the other passengers disembark before you get to your luggage. Duh! Before takeoff and landing, flight attendants usually flip a small switch on the bathroom door. This prevents it from flying open when it's not supposed to. With the same ease, a flight attendant can open the door when someone is inside. Look, they only need to lift the lavatory sign and move the knob into the unlocked position. Pilots don't worry about turbulence. That's because they know that there is a thing way more dangerous than any turbulence. It's an updraft. In most cases, turbulence only drops you a couple of feet down, even though it might feel as if you're falling from the top of the Empire State Building. If the turbulence is strong enough for the pilots to ask flight attendants to sit down, the plane can go 10 to 20 feet down. The most extreme white-knuckle turbulence is super rare. But an updraft is a big air mass, part of a storm or some other weather phenomenon, moving upwards. Pilots don't see updrafts on their radars at night, and when a plane hits one, it feels like driving over a huge speed bump at 500 miles per hour. An updraft is also extremely treacherous because it can push an aircraft upward to dangerous altitudes. Modern planes have a special system that detects other aircraft, mountains, and different solid objects in their path. 10 miles away from another plane, and a voice in the cockpit starts chanting, "Traffic, traffic." 5 miles closer, and the same voice begins to give pilots the directions. Airplanes can operate with one engine, even during takeoff and landing. Both engines failing simultaneously is almost unheard of. But even then, a plane wouldn't drop from the sky like a rock. Pilots would have up to 20 minutes to find a suitable place to land. The way the cabin is pressurized has a great effect on your taste buds. You lose up to 30% of your ability to taste sweet and salty things. In other words, it's not that airplane food isn't tasty, you just don't feel its flavor. That's also the main reason why airline catering companies add extra salt and spices to the dishes they cook. But you know what may help you? Noise-canceling earphones. For some reason, that probably has a scientific explanation. Cutting off all that noise around can help your taste buds. Each of those dings you hear during the flight has its own meaning. In most airlines, a boing soon after takeoff indicates that the landing gear is getting retracted. 3 dings in a row means more urgency than just one. A high-low ringtone informs crew members that their colleague needs them in another part of the plane. 3 low chimes means some serious turbulence ahead. Crew members are supposed to put away meal carts, take their seats, and fasten their seatbelts. If you're a nervous flyer, pick a seat in the middle of the cabin. Turbulence mostly affects the front and rear parts of the cabin. The middle section, which is over the wings, doesn't shake so much. Pilots and co-pilots eat different meals. The reason for this precaution is very simple. Imagine both pilots having the same dish and getting food poisoning. In this case, neither of them will be able to control the plane. If they still want to have the same dish and won't agree to have anything else, there's a safety net. Pilots don't have their meals at the same time. If one pilot ate the dish and still feels okay several hours later, the other pilot can brave their meal as well. What would you say when asked about the filthiest place on a plane? Nope, that's not the toilet seat. It's not even in the bathroom. Flight attendants warn that you should be particularly careful with headrests, seat pockets, tray tables, and seat belts. Experiments have shown that 1/3 of all seat belts have yeast and mold on them. Most tray tables are covered with bacteria. Seat pockets are extremely filthy too, but headrests are the dirtiest of them all. In most cases, flight attendants don't have enough time to change or disinfect them in between flights. If your captain announces they're finishing some paperwork, it means they're busy revising the flight itinerary or waiting for the ground staff to prepare the flight logbook. That's a journal that contains the official record of a journey. Some places, especially those flying long distances, have secret bedrooms for crew members to catch some shut-eye. These bedrooms, called crew rest compartments, are located either at the back of the plane or behind the cockpit. Such a compartment can have up to 10 comfortable beds where flight attendants can have a rest. Plane windows are made of super strong plexiglass that can easily cope with high speeds. And the window panes are shaped in a special way so that the high pressure inside the cabin pushes them against the aircraft body. In other words, plane windows are very unlikely to get broken. Once upon a time, plane windows were square, but the pressure built up in the corners of such windows, making them ultimate weak spots. This means that each square window had 4 weak spots. This made them likely to crash under the enormous stress of high altitudes. Luckily, making airplane windows curved solved this problem once and forever. Such a shape distributes the pressure and reduces the likelihood of cracks or any other damage. Planes regularly get struck by lightning, at least once a year or once per 1,000 hours of flight time. These days, it's totally safe. The electric charge simply runs through the aircraft's aluminum shell. It doesn't cause the plane any damage. But did you know that airplanes not only get hit by lightning, but they also trigger it? When an aircraft is flying through a cloud, the friction between its fuselage and the air creates static electricity. Sometimes it can cause lightning. You know how Stephen Hawking said, "The best evidence we have that time travel is not possible and never will be is that we have not been invaded by hordes of tourists from the future." But what if these tourists come to our time, but they do it secretly? You may even have met one of them. Let's see the most famous time travelers. Meet Orin. He's a cyborg who came to us from the year 2050 to stop the coming end of the world. In 2020, he appeared on a TV show where he said the whole world was inside the Matrix. Then he hit the headlines and gave an interview to a popular YouTube channel. As proof that he's a cyborg, he demonstrated his robotic voice, which can be made in a simple computer program. He also called himself We because he declared himself a collective consciousness that had come to save humanity. Oren became famous for his predictions about the near future, but it turned out that many experts had already announced these forecasts earlier. He also said that a huge corporation was suppressing humanity, and we were inside a complex computer simulation. If we don't improve or care for each other and nature, the end will begin in 2050. Oren no longer appears on major shows, but he has a small fan base of people who love all sorts of fantastic theories. Another time traveler is Adam Archin, who came to us from 2045. There was an interview with him on YouTube where he shared some details about the future of the US, after which the video went viral and hit the lines in many newspapers. Archin reported that the last official president of the country would be the daughter of Martin Luther King III, and she would become the greatest US president in history. Another exciting event that Archin announced is supposed to happen in 2028. He said that people would learn about the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations. He added that these creatures wouldn't come from outer space. The traveler also noted that the world would switch to a single digital currency and all cash would disappear. Of course, no one believed him, so the experts conducted a lie detector test. And Adam Archin successfully passed it. He said that he had a chip in his hand to facilitate time travel. An extraterrestrial civilization would arrive on Earth in 2028, and in 2045, people would be closer to robots. The lie detector didn't state that Archin was lying, but this doesn't mean he told the truth, since the device can be deceived with the help of special training. In any case, in 2028, we will find out whether Archin was right or not. All these time travelers arrive in the past and, for some reason, don't use knowledge from the future. What would you do if you could go back 50 years? Perhaps you would invest money in shares of some young company that will become a big, expensive corporation. In that case, everyone would believe that you really came from the past. And by the way, one guy did it. He invested $800 in the stock exchange and made $350 million out of it. This guy's name was Andrew Carlson, and he hit a big jackpot in 2003. However, he didn't manage to enjoy a rich life because the FBI came for him. Andrew sold some stocks and bought others, and did this very successfully. Thus, in a few months, he became a millionaire. The Securities Commission couldn't believe in such coincidences, so it called the FBI. During the interrogation, everyone was sure Andrew would begin to justify himself and say he was lucky. But instead, he calmly replied that he came from the year 2256 with the help of a time machine. Of course, no one took it seriously. But when the FBI started looking for information about this man, they found nothing. Andrew Carlson had no documents. He was not in any database. He just appeared out of nowhere and started making a lot of money. He was interrogated for about 4 hours, and he behaved pretty calmly. It seemed as if he was telling the truth. However, he didn't tell them the time machine's location. When the press found out about this man, he immediately became a celebrity. Well-known news sites began to write about Andrew Carlson. Articles have appeared in Japan, Australia, Germany, the UK, and other countries. And of course, journalists started calling the FBI to find out more details about this guy. And the FBI told them that the whole story was fiction and that there was no Andrew Carlson. Information about him appeared on an internet resource known for its fake news. At some point, the article about the time traveler somehow got into Yahoo, where it went viral. So, as we see, all statements about time travelers are either fiction or a lie. Conversations about such travels appeared thanks to fantastic films and books.
Pop culture has greatly influenced this fantastic concept and created several theories claiming that time travel is real. And some people believe that, especially those who are far from science. But what do real scientists think about this? Are such trips really possible? Let's try to find out. Scientists say yes, time travel is real because we're now traveling in time. Time is moving forward and we're moving with it. We call it a journey. But if we need to get into the future or go back to the past, everything is much more complicated here. Remember Einstein's little theory of relativity? It says that time moves relative to the observer and has no constant value. To understand better, here's a simple example. 10 hairs on your head. Is it a lot or a little? 10 hairs in a bowl of soup. Is that a lot or a little? Everything is relative and depends on the conditions. The same thing happens with time and space. If we move at a tremendous speed, close to the speed of light, then time slows down for us. The perception of time becomes different for a person who's running and for one who's standing still. If we're near some heavy object, let's say 1,000 times heavier than the sun, then the time next to this object also slows down, thanks to its strong gravity. In this sense, time travel is possible. If you're an old person and meet your friend as young as he was 50 years ago. Why are you so young? Oh, I've been flying in space at a tremendous speed all this time, that's all. But this doesn't mean that this friend just sat on the ship for 50 years and didn't age. No, time was different for him. 10 years for you on Earth is a long period of time, but for him, these 10 years passed like half an hour. Gravity and speed bend time. For this reason, astronaut Scott Kelly, who spent a year and a half in orbit, became 5 milliseconds younger than his twin brother after coming to Earth. All this time Scott spent inside the ship flying in orbit at high speed, and he was also further away from the gravitational center of the planet. So, time was slower for him by 5 milliseconds than for his brother. Objectively, time always runs at the same speed, but its speed changes inside the perceptions of different observers under different conditions. That's what the theory of relativity is about. But what about jumping into the future or the past, like in movies? Wormholes will help you with this. This is something like tunnels that pass through space and time and can connect different time segments in different places in the universe. They are like cheat codes that can break the laws of the universe. Wormholes are elusive, have different sizes, are unpredictable, appear in space, and vanish. But their main problem is that wormholes only exist in theory and sci-fi and have never been noticed in our universe by scientists.